everyone, and welcome to the Senate Media Availability. We are a little bit running behind, so we'll get right to questions. Welcome to those who are watching us over the internet. We enjoy this discussion and this openness. And our minority leader is with me today, Senator Davis, and so you can kind of get all kinds of perspectives in this forum. Let's go ahead and open it up to questions from the media.
Any surprises in base budgets that you're looking at?
I haven't seen any surprises.
We'll know more on those base budgets this evening when they're presented to us and the concerns of the committees. I imagine there's a lot of concern out there because it's the base budget, and they'll begin looking at those building blocks that they need also and addressing those this evening.
The governor is about to have a press conference in a little bit outlining cost estimates for the state prison. How satisfied are you with the information you've been getting on those cost estimates over time? Do you think it was lowballed originally or not?
I don't think so. I'm in the development business, and construction costs have gone up significantly. The airport, their predictions for costs were at a certain level, and I think they're even a couple $100 million over on the airport. Just we're in good times, but that also means higher construction costs. My company is building a parking garage that we thought would be around $10 million. It's $12 million now. Cost of concrete, steel, rebar, all that have gone up, and I think it's reflected in what's going on with the prison.
Yes. I see this as a glass half empty or half full. And if you look at it, the state, if we hadn't have purchased the ground when we did, we've seen great inflation in ground. So we've actually bought the property at probably pre some of this inflation prices. And so we have an asset there, and we haven't yet disposed of the prison asset. So we actually are getting inflation from both of those. We're seeing a little building cost increase, but if you are a developer, you have been really done well because your net worth of the ground you bought has increased, and the net worth of the ground that you still have has increased. You're having to pay a little more for a building, but if you look at the whole picture, the state has really done well, and by far the inflation on the ground the prison sits on would eclipse the cost of the new building, the increases. So if you're looking at this from a development standpoint, the state has done very well. Now, you can't control costs, and we'd all like to have, when you go to build something, we'd like to have costs go down, but it's not unusual for inflation to push it up. So I feel very comfortable with what they've done, and maybe if we had worked on this and hadn't been quite as transparent and done it quicker, I'm teasing, but if we'd have done it quicker and not taken as long a process, we would have been ahead of the inflation curve. But I think if you want to go through a good process, you have to deal with the things that you do, and going through that process has taken more time, and with it you've seen more inflation. And I think we did the right thing by taking the time, but it's taken a long time to get it going, and part of that time that we've taken to be transparent and go through that process has caused that inflation.
Does it raise any second thoughts about the location of the prison, given the issues with ground stability and all of that were always seen as maybe increasing costs, unforeseen increases?
Yeah, I've thought a little bit about that. You wonder about, but I'm not a big historian, but I think the prison was originally in Sugar House, wasn't it? And it probably moved out of Sugar House because it wasn't the best location for it. And the reason it wasn't the best location is it was built in the middle of the growth path. And then it moved to the point of the mountain. And the reason it wasn't the best location at the point of the mountain was because it's in the middle of the growth path. At the position it's at right now, unless we see cattails and ducks, pushing it out, is in what I think is the smartest of the three. And if we'd have built there originally, we wouldn't be moving it 3 times. And so you can say, yeah, there's additional cost for the, I suppose, the construction of it. But if you could pick a spot for it where you've got a hospital, all the services, all the things that they took time, and I wish Senator Stevenson or Representative Wilson were here to talk about it. When you took the criteria of where they had to locate it and what services were available and the volunteer community that was within a period of time of the prison that is so active at the prison effort, I think it's the right spot. Is it perfect? No, and there's some problems.
But with those problems, are we gonna see a big escalate? Because it's construction cost inflation that's causing the issue, right? Are we gonna see the additional needs of that site continue to boost this cost?
I think one of the things you have to look at, when we went out to bid with the original estimate of cost, and then you take a look at today's costs, they've escalated. I don't think when we went out and got that first bid, it was more construction cost than it was getting the site ready or anything else. I think the one hidden cost that's gonna come up is when we go to clear that site, the old site. Because it's not gonna be it's gonna be a pristine piece of land for development once it's cleared off. And we'll be doing that also. So this is a two-pronged situation, I believe, as I understand it anyway. It's not just building the new prison. I mean, when the prison was moved from its antiquated site back in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, out of Sugar House, remember what we did with that land? We cleared it off and then just turned it into a park. This is going to be a different story. And building the new prison is going to take time. And stabilizing the land that we chose, which looked at, when you take a look, that whole northwest quadrant where we picked that land 5 years ago, 6 years ago, was actually never destined to grow. Nothing would ever be out there. And now we're taking a look at great growth ideas that are going on out there. So wherever we go in the state of Utah, we're going to see growth. And with growth comes cost increases.
So many people, and I probably ought to talk to GoEd or EDC Utah or someone, but many people are saying that, Adobe's locating in that area. That they probably, Amazon, not Adobe, Amazon.
Adobe's
And-
already
yeah,
done
Adobe,
this, right?
too many A's, but Amazon's locating in that area, and they're saying that perhaps they may not have located there if we hadn't have had the commitment to infrastructure and the other development that's going on there. So, again, you can look at the glass half empty. We got a problem with some of the construction costs, or you can look at it as half full, and I think the glass is probably running over the top. It's not half full.
There's still some things, I think there's still some things to discover, but we've discovered most of what will increase, and so I think there's still a little bit of volatility in what we're doing, but it's still the right decision and we're moving forward.
Senator Stevenson and Representative Wilson are probably the best ones, so they're living it, and DSCM and those building it can answer some of those other questions.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody that's watching today? Anything?
What about the transportation, and again, another senator's not here, sorry, but the transportation task force bill, I was told yesterday it will include a provision to study whether the state should eventually take over UTA. I know there've been concerns about the impact of their debt load on the state's credit rating, but apparently everyone wants to take a look at that. Is that something you support? Do you think there could be a state takeover down the road?
I support looking at it, but I don't know if I'd support taking over it. I think there's a lot yet to be discovered before I would even begin to answer that question.
Do you think there's even a possibility, given that debt load question? I mean, what would it take for you?
That's
to
really
feel
hard to
comfortable?
overcome, because I think those bonds, what were they, 30-year bonds, some of them? But I can't remember them, but they're longer-term bonds than the state usually enters into. Our maximum term is about 15 years, but I know that they were longer. Maybe they were 20-year bonds. Anyway, 20, 30 years, that's a long time before, and then there'll probably be some additional debt go on, and so that question, really, I think a fairly, it's a pretty big barrier to overcome. But I think it's a worthy question to investigate. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.
It's a complicated
It's
question.
Friday
Right on
tomorrow.
time.
Yeah, Senator Stevenson's here, so you can ask more questions.